Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Robert Glazer. Linked on this show is all about posing questions to thought leaders and doers like Bob, who are changing our world for the better. Grace Under Pressure focuses on the stuff that we often call the soft stuff, the caring, the compassion, the conviction we exert toward others. And when you do it as a leader, as Robert Glazer is, it takes a lot of effort, and we're going to explore that. And so, Rob, it's a pleasure to welcome you today, and I want to tell folks all about you.
Hey, John, thanks so much for having me.
Robert Glazer is the founder and CEO of Acceleration Partners, a global partner marketing agency and the recipient of numerous industry and company culture awards, including Glassdoor's Employee Choice Awards 2 years in a row. That's pretty cool. It means people want to work for you. So way to go. Robert is the author of the inspirational newsletter, which I subscribe to, called Friday Forward. He's a Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and international best-selling author of 4 books. Count them: Elevate, Friday Forward, Performance Partnerships, and How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace, which we'll talk about today. Bob is also a very well sought after speaker when we do speak, and he's, like me, he's a podcaster. So welcome, Robert Glazer.
Thank you, John.
Great. You work globally because you're a global firm. So we are in our second year of the pandemic. What's the mood that you encounter?
Yeah, look, one of the things that we're a professional services firm, so we deal in people all day long, people as our employees, people as clients. And, in the past in our business, if there was something that was really stressing people out, we could dig in and say, oh, look, the problem is we got too many clients starting at the middle of the month. So let's hire a client start director, or let's spread out the start dates and we could solve the problem. I think the interesting challenge for leaders the last couple of years is that the threshold for stress in business has just been lowered, from 75 to 35. It has nothing to do with what's going on in the business. It has to do with what's going on at home and outside. And so it needed a lot of grace this year and understanding what's going on. And as I say, it's a really difficult balancing act as a leader to say, look, I understand what's going on and I need to help you in your situation, your family or otherwise, but I also need to make sure all these clients don't leave us so that you have a job to come back to, right? Or because that's certainly going to be a lot more stressful having no job than having, a job with 3 kids homeschooling. So that has been a really, I think it's been one of the greatest challenges, for probably most people's careers, how to sort of lead through that and focus on the empathy and give people the flexibility they need. But if I gave everyone 3/4 of their time off, we'd have no clients and they'd have no job. So that's also just a reality.
Right. Well, you hit the nail on the head. You are a great place to work. People want to work with you because you do good work for your clients, and people like it too. But we're all stressed out. So I'm guessing that might have led you to your new book, How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace.
Yeah. So we used to kind of hide the fact that we work with a lot of blue chip clients that we were remote. And when all this happened, I was getting asked to speak and talk, and I'd see similar questions. And I put together an ebook pretty quickly. And then I had some more time to really interview some people and, take kind of 10 years of what I had learned. Now, 10 years since 14 years, but 10 years since we really kind of committed that this was going to be the path, and try to share with companies about what we learned about what works and doesn't work and how to have a good remote culture. I don't say the irony or the interesting thing, and not to spoil the book, but the companies doing really well with remote work had pretty strong cultures going into it. If you had good communication, good reporting, good clarity, managers who trusted people, all of these things translated to remote work a lot better. I think being forced to go remote for a lot of companies was like the tide going out and seeing who's got a bathing suit on and who doesn't have a bathing suit on.
Yes, that's a good one. The buzzword for 2020 I came across, called Blur's Day. The days just run into one another. Yeah. So in your book, why is it important? I think it's obvious, but it's good to stop and think about it. Why do we need to delineate our work and personal life?
Yeah, if you haven't watched the movie Groundhog Day in the past, to me that is the anthem of COVID. We watched it with our kids, and it's very funny. And I was just chatting about that on someone who was on my podcast. But yeah, what happens is if you don't create these artificial barriers, I think the fear of remote work was always that people were going to be, playing with their kids and not working and not available. The reality of remote work is most people don't draw a line, and they've got their laptop in bed and they've other stuff. So the commute actually serves a purpose in the morning and the afternoon. The office serves a purpose. There's space delineation. There's sort of like, I think you need to recreate a bunch of these barriers. So it's like, this is what going to work looks like. This is what coming home looks like. This is my workspace. This is my not workspace. My phone stays downstairs and is not, on my night table. Because if you wake up in the morning and you turn on your phone and you look at all the things that happen overnight, it's like someone grabbed you out of the bed in your pajamas and threw you, into the office. So I think it's really important to add that sort of routine and separation into your day and schedule.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I have actually always worked virtually because I've had a home office in my field, in my career. And I've worked in offices, of course. So I kind of feel that, people were welcoming to my world, but I have been doing what you do, where you advise for 40 plus years, and that's create a schedule. I get up, I exercise, and all those other things, but the clear delineation and that gave me what I needed, which is structure. Not everybody needs it, but I do. So
yeah.
And is that something that you advise people to do, to create structure in their work life?
Yeah, look, interestingly, I also think your office or your place of work, it's both for you to know you're in work mode and other people to know you're in work mode. I actually, with all the kids home and stuff early on, I actually set up my office. I moved it to the dining room, left them with the other playroom office I used to be in. And just interesting, because I'm there, people would just walk up and ask me something or interrupt or whatever. Again, there's an assumption that, because they can see me, that I am available. So that's why I think some of this stuff is really important too.
Well, especially with children. I mean, that's the thing, because they're not, this has been imposed on them as much as it has been on us. And I'll say to you, Robert, I'll give you a call out, as I do to all working parents. If you are working from home full time and you have children at home, you guys are the unsung heroes. And I truly mean that. And I'm a grandfather, so I can say that because my children are grown, but it's really tough. So what lessons do you advise parents with kids at home like this?
Yeah, I think that it's not easy. There's no good answer to you have a no preschool or daycare and a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and you have to get your job done. I think that I always talk about, I think the concept of integration is more valid than balance, right? Balance is this unachievable thing. So I think it is better to, and I've seen people with these schedules to say, look, I'm on for 2 hours, I'm off for 1. Again, that's sort of I am not going to try to do the work with the kid watching. I'm going to give them the attention. And some of the great parents at our company have done this, and they've kind of had to train their kids. There's mommy and you time, and then there's mommy work time. And when we're doing that, I'm going to put the note on the office, and here's what you can do. And you can bother me if it's an emergency, right? So, but they are on the flip side too. When it's time to get off and go, fulfill that they promised the kid at 2:00, they were going to have movie hour together. They do that. And I think it would be better to have a day that looked totally segregated between those activities than trying to overlap them in some way, because then you'll feel not present for either one of them.
That's a good thing, that structure there. And that's a way to avoid the blur's day in the sense, at least internally, because as you said, delineated those times. And you talk about something that the meeting strategy, cadence, and style is different in virtual. Tell us about that, Bob.
Yeah, so my 3 rules for meeting virtually are: 1, do an inventory of your meetings. Kind of when you move, you're tempted to box up all this stuff you haven't used in 5 years and move it to your new house. People end up throwing out a lot of their stuff. To me, that's like meetings. Is this meeting valuable? We do the traction system, and the notion of a level 10 meeting is you rate it. And if everyone would rate a meeting a 5 at the end, then it's not providing any value while you're doing the meeting. So first, overhaul your meetings. See if you even need them anymore. People ask everyone, does this meeting provide any value? And this, frankly, most of these things you could do even not remote. Two,
Right.
cut all your meetings in half. There is just a total Zoom fatigue. Number of hours a day people can be in meetings remotely, and retreats. Everything I've seen has been generally half the time. You just can't keep people on for that long. So cut it in half, which means you have to change the format. And then my third rule is no update meetings. So I've always hated update meetings.
Mm-hmm.
That's a meeting where you get on, and a lot of nonprofit and the finance chair gets on and reads all the finance stuff out there. Well,
Right.
You've got 10 people who are 10 CEOs or leaders of a company. They can read. They don't need you to read this to them. So, Jeff Bezos mastered this years ago at Amazon, like a memo strategy. Like you should give report outs before the meeting. The meeting should be then much shorter, and you should be discussing the key issues. But expect people to come in having read that. If I'm on a meeting and I'm just talking the whole time, that's not a meeting. I could video that and send it to my company. If everyone's just talking, if there's not any dialogue or interaction, that is that's not a meeting. It's kind of like you're running a tape, except it's just live. So I can't stand update meetings. Any organization I've been part of, I've eliminated them. You send out something good in advance, have people read it, have them get up to speed, and then use the meeting to discuss and dialogue and solve problems.
Right. Yeah. And so let me push back on that or get you to explicate. So I like that idea. It's pare it down to memo, send it out that way. So then how are issues handled?
Well, issues would be dialogue, right? So then I'm not saying it replaces the meeting. It just cuts the hour meeting down to a half an hour of discussion rather than a half an hour of readouts and then a half an hour of discussion. So that's what you actually want. Is you want to say, well, here's the plan we're going to put forward with. Come to the meeting and bring your objections and let's discuss them and otherwise, rather than the meeting being a lot longer and doing that all at once.
Right. And I think that leads to our next topic. It's obvious, but how often do we forget it? What's the outcome of the meeting? Know it before you go in.
Right. Yeah. Why are you having it? What are you looking for? Is it a new idea? Is it to update people? Is it to inform them? Like I always believe in the Stephen Covey sort of begin with the end in mind. So I think that's a key principle.
I know it's something that I teach the people I work with as a way of paring down meetings and getting to the essence is what is it that you want to achieve? It also sharpens the communication, right. Does it not? So. Yeah,
look, momentum, things just go on because they go on because everyone's like, this has sucked forever. Like, we have our employees will complain sometimes that they just have too many client calls and they're doing a weekly call. Have you ever asked the client if that weekly call is helpful to them or they'd rather it be biweekly? Because if they're like, we don't want to be doing this weekly either, and we boom, now we just cut the meeting time in half. So I actually always like that level 10 thing. Like if everyone are at the end, if you're not getting real-time feedback about that meeting, like if it's not a 9 or a 10, if it's a 4 or a 5 or people just don't want to be on it, then why have it if it has no value?
Okay. Well, you raised something, and because you're in the service industry, and essentially I am too. It's a high-touch field. So if we pare these things down, are we shorting our clients or are we actually doing something better? What's your philosophy? So
I think it's about value. So if they're really valuable and everyone values it, if everyone's like, oh crap, we have that call, but no one's saying it. There are a lot of calls that go on for years where everyone is thinking that going into it, just no one says it. So to me, it's about value because if the client's like, no, look, we need this weekly call. Too much goes on. It makes more work if we don't have it. Like you should feel like that meeting, like we have our 90-minute leadership team meeting a week. Like we believe that saves 10 other meetings and dialogues if that has run well and productively. And if we don't have that, it necessitates a lot more work than if we have it.
Right. So what are the types of things you would cover in this 90-minute lead team meeting? So.
We follow the EOS traction format kind of to a T. So we go through updates, metrics. All of the updates and metrics in first section is designed to build issues and opportunities. Mm-hmm. And then when we get through that, we list all the issue opportunities, then we prioritize them, and then we dedicate the rest of the time to discussing and solving and many of those things was the next step as we can. And then the ones that were lower priority, sometimes they're there the next week, and sometimes they've just been solved by then.
Okay.
But what happens in most meetings, why I love that format, is you end up talking about something for an hour that was the lowest priority. So the whole first half of the meeting is to collect all the stuff and then consciously rank it before you dive into it, so you don't waste all your time on something that didn't matter.
Great. Now, okay, it sounds logical and all of that and appealing. What about collaboration? Because with people that, you want to have a team where people can weigh in and things like that. So are you minimizing that, or how does that work?
No, that's the whole second half. So after we rank ordered all of the things, we put them, someone brings it, opportunity or issue, and we discuss it out. And then at some point, as it's getting old, we figure out what is the next step.
Okay, great. So going back to your original concept, or not original, but your office, Acceleration Partners, has been working remotely, virtually for a time, well before COVID. So what are the principles of the culture that you established that you teach and share with others?
Yeah, our culture is based on flexibility and accountability. They go hand in hand. I think some people want the flexibility and they don't want the accountability. But that's always been our foundation of remote. It was not about being remote. And then really, like, it comes down to our core values, which are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. Those align very specifically to the types of people we want, flexible and accountable work, and the culture that we want to build. And we don't have a wall, so they're not things on the wall, but they're things you hear every day, you see in performance reviews, you see them talked about. So those are the behaviors that we really try to manage too.
Okay. Now, how are you, we know the words, but I just want to push here. What is, within your culture, what does flexibility mean? So
flexibility means that in general, people don't tell you how to do it, right? Again, we're not concerned that it's, you're in your desk from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Like, if you can get it done, you want to get it done from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., like, that's fine. We're an outcome-oriented culture. We're not regulating inputs. That has been one of the biggest shifts that managers had to make, I think, during COVID. First of all, again, I would say a great leader should be outcome metric oriented anyway. You should not be, regulating time or what you should be regulating outcomes. But that's the biggest shift people have had to make, because they realized they were just all they knew how to. John was here from 9 to 5. That's how I knew he was working. Well, if that's your metric, then that's not a really good metric, because John could have been playing Tetris on his computer the whole time, even though he was there from 9 to 5.
That's a good one. Occupying space.
Yeah.
Check that off. That's great.
We get this in sales, right? We get that we measure the salesperson on what they sell, not on the amount of calls they make. Those are diagnostic tools to figure out if they're doing work. But you would take the salesperson that worked 2 hours a day and sold $10,000 over the person who worked 10 hours a day and sold $2,000 every single day of the week.
Right. And so in our, you are the CEO and founder of Acceleration Partners. In this added dimension, when you talk to fellow CEOs who ask you, or if you have conversations, how do I stay in touch with my people beyond updates, if you will? Do you have any insights into that, Bob?
Yeah, look, Friday Forward was a way for me to connect to people. We've done a wellness challenge in groups. We've done game night stuff via Zoom. Like, we have management forums. Like, we have different ways that we try to mix and connect people in different contexts. So you just, in the same way that you just need to step away from the sort of transactional stuff into what are the more fun ways that people can work together and get to know each other.
Okay. What is one of the big, we've had a lot of guests on this show, a few psychiatrists and psychologists, and anxiety levels are very high. Part of that,
very, very, very high. Yeah.
Due to ambiguity, ambiguity is, we all want certainty. What advice do you give to people struggling with ambiguity and uncertainty? Yeah.
I two separate things. I think clear communication and communicating as well as possible eliminates a lot of ambiguity. At the same time, I think you got to coach people out of, like, you're not entitled to some certain outcome in life or every day or otherwise. And, like, this happens and we have to deal with it. So some of it is undoing some just, learned behavior. Like, look, we didn't, everyone, like, COVID messed up their, no one no one entitled you to nothing ever going wrong or a perfect thing, or this is part of the cycles, is part of life. Like it's not, no one's doing anything to you. So I think a lot of the anxiety is because of increase in individualism in society. And again, people, I think we had an entire generation of kids it was about preparing the path for my kid, not preparing my kid for the path. And I think we're seeing some of the outcome of that, of sort of the helicopter parent mentality of like, oh, I can make anything go away. Well, you can't make a global pandemic go away. So how do you dig in? How do you be resilient? Look, there's always someone worse off. I think gratitude is a great way to alleviate anxiety, because if you're really stressed about juggling your kid and your 60-hour-a-week job and the $150,000, there's someone else who's fighting for food and a roof tonight because of the pandemic. So if you can take a step back and look at, would you rather be that person or would you rather be you? I think gratitude really helps ease anxiety.
Yes, I mean, gratitude of oneself, but also the idea of the flip of gratitude is be thankful. Certainly be thankful for what you have, but pay it back or pay it forward. Right. So that's a great way to alleviate. As I'm doing what I can. But
look, there was not a single leader in April of 2020 that could have given their team certainty, right? So what they can give them is transparency and support. Very much like agree with the Stockdale paradox of like, we're going to get through it, but here are the realities. And I think you don't want to sugarcoat it. But it was also no one could promise. I mean, every week was like a month at that point. So you could say, this is what we're looking at. This is the best that we're doing. We will keep you posted, but none of us know what next week is going to look like.
Okay. Now, looking ahead, how far ahead, I don't know. The idea of the hybrid office, some will be in the office and some will not. So you've always had that model. Am I correct?
We don't have any offices, so we've been fully remote.
So you're totally virtual.
Yeah.
So as an outsider talking to your clients, what do you see? Will we have this hybrid model, or what's your perspective? So
you're going to have all three. You're going to have people returning to the office, but their employees might not want to go back. You're going to have people jettisoning the office, but their employees might be had wanted to go back. And I think hybrid is the most dangerous. It will be the most adopted, but it's the most dangerous. And I say that in that I think hybrid as a strategy, if well executed and supported, can work. I think hybrid as the absence of making a decision is going to be really problematic, because you need to be clear about, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a meeting in the office and those people are all at the table on it and you can join by Zoom? Like I heard one leader tell me that even if there's a meeting in the office, everyone will go into Cubbies and join by Zoom so that there's no different playing field. I don't have to go in, but the people going in and having lunch with John every Wednesday seem to be getting better assignments, right? Or the person that, is being passed over is not there. So I think you need to be really specific about what hybrid means, what that means for expectations of out of the office, into the office, meetings, career, other comp, all these things. And then it could work. But if you're just like, do whatever you want, we're going to have an office come in, I think that's going to be a disaster.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I'm glad you talked about promotions, because that is going to be a serious issue, how we evaluate talent in a virtual environment. Excuse me. Excuse me. It always hits you only when you're live. Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I've written about and talked to clients about, is how are we going to recognize? So what tip is, because you've always been virtual. So what tips might you have for an executive looking to identify and promote talent? Is there anything you can share?
Look, we really align it to our values, and to giving people opportunities and seeing them step up, and clear metrics and objectives, so that the people being promoted are the people who are really filling out their scorecards with green lights and who are kind of shining examples of the core values. And that shouldn't matter whether they're remote or otherwise. And again, that's where the outcomes matter, right? That's where the clear scorecard of this is what a good job looks like, irrespective of where it's done, versus this is the person schmoozing the boss every day in the office.
You also have something which is some tips in the book about be happy, engaged, and fulfilled. So anything you want to share on that? I mean, because we all want to be happy. You all want to be fulfilled and engaged. So what's the dimension when we're virtual or remote? So.
Yeah, I think you need to try to bring the things that are important to you to work and connect to them. And there's certainly opportunities on that. One example, if you think about someone who really maybe they think they, want to make a contribution and work in a nonprofit, but really they could then step in and volunteer to help lead the organization's nonprofit initiatives. We encourage our employees to figure out what do they like to do, what are they good at, what are their strengths, where can we leverage that in the organization? I think sometimes people are looking for this panacea of this, it's more about the perfect place or the perfect job versus like, how can I connect what I care about or to the type of work that I'm doing or change up my situation at work? Because if it's just transactional, then the motivation will wear off after a while.
It's a very good point, and it's matching your matching your talents for what it is you like to do and what you can do. And I like the way you broadened it out to beyond the work environment, get involved in a philanthropical or whatever volunteer, helps you to succeed. Which is the perfect lead-in. Every guest I ask a story of grace. Do you have one that you want to share with us, Bob?
Yeah, so I think it was a couple years ago, whenever the hurricanes in Puerto Rico were, my family and I went down there for April break after that on sort of a service trip. We had found a few organizations that needed help. We decided it'd be a really good thing for our kids. And, we live in Northeast. It's kind of a bubble in terms of the rest of the world. And one of the things that we did down there was we worked at a food bank. Chef World Central Kitchen, which is a phenomenal
Chef Andres.
Yes, that's Chef Andres. Phenomenal organization, like so well run. And they had a whole cooking op. So we cut and we chopped and we cooked for hours, kind of all of these meals to then be served in the community. And we had volunteered to do all the cooking that day. And someone asked us at the end if we wanted to go do delivery with them, and we said, sure, we'll do that. Sounds like a good experience. And we're driving this bright blue Jeep Wrangler like rental car, and we start following them. Half the cell phone networks are still not up. I'm realizing like if I lose them with my GPS, like I have no idea where I am, like outside in the middle of Puerto Rico in this car with my pretty young kids. So we stop at the first place. There were some, clear addicts and folks can get out and gave them food. And, it was not a great neighborhood. We then drove into and we were with someone from the community who just knew where all the need was. Sure. And so we had the kids get out and, bring the food over and bring them the food and the stuff. And then we went to this other neighborhood, which was just one of the poorest places I had ever seen, houses without walls and windows and, outside of, my comfort zone. I mean, I'm looking at my wife saying like, we don't know where we are. We are following this car. Like we are in the middle of nowhere. Are we sort of like putting our kids in danger? And so we stopped at this, and my daughter at the time was really kind of anxious about these sort of things. We stopped at this place and I was honestly scared to get out of the car based on where we were. Like I could just remember what it all looked like. And the woman in front of us got out and then there were a bunch of kids there and we were going to almost like turn around and my kids who had sort of been, the role just flipped, right? Where they saw these kids, they got out, they went and got the meal, went and served it from them. And it was just such a like role reversal for me, and that they had just seen these kids and sort of resonated with them and didn't notice everything else that you would notice as an adult around safety and security and otherwise. And we went on to do that for about an hour, and it was a pretty incredible experience. And just, cooking the food is one thing, but seeing the devastation and the poverty firsthand was something I won't forget, and I know they won't forget.
And here it was. You were worried rightly about your children and their safety, and in this moment of a crisis or tension, the kids were the ones that rose and met the occasion. So what a wonder. So I'd say that's good parenting, Bob. I'll give you and your wife kudos for that.
I did not feel like a good parent at the time.
Anyway, you've been a great guest up here. How can people find you? So
if you can spell my name, you should be able to find me at robertglazer.com. So everything is there. Books, podcasts, Friday Forward if you want to sign up. It's all in one place.
Great. Robert, you have been a terrific guest. I thank you. And with that, we'll close out.
Thank you, John.